This is Jeff Price from Price Gaming, and today I'd like to show you how I turn my miniatures into tokens for Roll20. So come in here and we'll go and take a look at some of these. As you can tell, I've got a bunch to choose from. Okay, we are now inside my room that I use as storage as well as where I take pictures of miniatures. As you can see behind me, I have some green fabric and some studio lights, but you don't necessarily have to have studio lights depending on your budget. Desk lamps can also work. Just make sure that you have white balance, that the lights are off except for the lights you're using, and you want to eliminate any shadows or as much shadow as you can off your object, as I will demonstrate. Okay, here we got our studio lights set up with our green cloth placed on a small little table. Then we're going to grab our object, which happens to be the Droid Control Ship, and we're going to put it right on the green cloth. We're going to turn on the camera. Now you can use your smartphone or iPhone or whatever you have available to take still photos with. So I'm going to turn on the lights now. And then I'm going to turn off the main lights. Okay, so now as we're looking at our object, we want to make sure that the light's hitting it so that there's no shadows coming off of it, or at least eliminate it to where there's very little shadow. So I think we've done pretty much that with this lighting. So I'm going to get the camera ready and take a image of it. Now, this is where a tripod would come in handy, and I recommend a tripod. So now we take a picture, and let's get the next miniature. Okay, so here's a D&D miniature. So it could also be used for Star Wars or Pathfinder. Some insectoid, large creature. Pretty sure they have those in Star Wars as well as D&D and Pathfinder. So I'm going to get that in position and do the same thing. So as we're looking at it, we make sure that the lights are canceling out any shadows. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, get it kind of centered. And it's a little difficult to see from here, but I got the miniature where I want it, and I'm going to take a picture of it and use it to edit. So focus, click. Another one just in case. Okay, now that I have copied my images over from the camera card, you can see I got them in my Windows Explorer. I've got a lot of pictures, as you can see. I'm going to go ahead and drag that one over. So inside Photoshop, this is kind of what it looks like when you first open it up. I'm just going to use Photoshop. It's a pretty popular program. I think you can do a trial if you want. If you got a bunch of images you want to just kind of knock out, if you decide to let the trial period lapse. Just going to take this and drag it and drop. And creates a new comp around it. Basically, it just opens up the image file. If I look at my layers panel here, I'm just going to double click on it. When I do that, it asks me if I'm going to make a new layer. Yes, I want to make it into a new layer, so I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go ahead and save this before I do anything else. And you know, a new feature of the newest version of Photoshop lets you save to the cloud, so I'll just go ahead and do that. I'll save to the cloud, make it easy. And I'm going to call this mini template. Then I can just use this file to put all my miniatures on. So one of these really neat tools that I found is the object selection tool. So what this does is it sees that I got a lot of green around the object, and it's going to try and figure out what object I want to select based on the repeating pattern of the green background. So as you can see, this works a lot better than the Magic Wand tool. So this is a lot better upgrade. Now I like to fine tune this a little bit better. I noticed that some of the green area is still kind of showing, so I can try and get that. I still have this tool selected, the object select tool, and with a lot of other selection tools, if I'm in Photoshop and I have a selection tool selected, there's shortcut keys that let you add to or subtract from a selection. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and as you see, my cursor changed. Let me move it over here so you can see. So I release the Alt key, and when I hold down on the Alt key, now you see like a little minus key. So that should try and remove from the selection. So I'm going to try and get this little green area and see if it can figure that out. And it did a pretty decent job. Not quite as good as I want, as I am a perfectionist. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let go of the Alt key, and I'm going to come over to my tool panel, and I just want a regular brush. The regular brush tool. It's also the B if you hit the letter B on your keyboard. I'm going to select this. I'm not going to paint anything yet. I'm just going to have that tool selected, and as you can see, it's this tiny little brush right here. I can increase the size. If I go up to the tool option up here, I can increase size this way, or I can click on the open and close bracket as the shortcut key. So I can make it bigger. As you can see, it's a little bit bigger now, or I can make it smaller. I'm going to go back to where it was because I want it kind of small. So 9 point's good. I know it's hard to see, but I'm going to go select 9 point. What every layer has whenever you're dealing with the selection tools, I think under select most of the, I think it's called a quick mask. Yeah, quick mask mode. So almost anything that has to do with the selection tools would be under this menu, the select. And as you can see, it says edit in quick mask mode. What that lets us do is actually paint our selection, or remove parts that we don't want and add parts that we do want. Well, in this mode, you get black and white and the grayscale basically. So black is transparent areas, white is the area that you want selected. It's the opaque area. So if I paint with the black, which is the color which is on top, it will erase from my selection. So if I hit the Q for quick mask mode, you can see that the selection now has excluded that area. I'm going to go back into quick mask mode. Right, and I'm going to undo by doing Control Z, or you can do undo. Well, I have to undo a couple times because I went in and out of quick mask mode. So let me back up a few levels. So I'm just undoing a few steps. Photoshop, I think by default lets you go back 15 or 25 steps. I'm not quite sure the number, but it's quite a few. So I'm going to go View, Zoom in, or hold down the Control button and the plus button to zoom in. Then I'm a big fan of shortcuts. So I'm going to hold down the space bar, and that gives me my hand tool, which is also called the pan tool. So I'm going to use that open bracket key, or you can also choose here to make your size smaller. I'm going to make my size a little smaller. Right? And as you can see, I got part of the ship that I don't want. So I'm going to click on this arrow to swap the color so that my white is on the foreground. You can also click on the X key to swap those between the foreground and background color, but I want white on the foreground because I want to remove this red, which indicates what I don't want selected. So I'm just using the shortcuts, the open key, and the open bracket and the close bracket, which is right next to your P key on the keyboard. The little bracket keys. So if I hit the one closest to the P, it makes it smaller. If I hit the one right adjacent to that, it makes it larger. Right, and then I'm just gonna kind of freehand it with the mouse and get rid of the parts that I don't want selected. I'm going to swap my colors to black because I don't want this green in my selection. So if you click and hold down the shift key and click again, it makes a straight line. It might be hard to see. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more and probably go in a little bit more detail than needed, but click in one point, holding the shift down, clicking another point, it makes a straight line. So You can do that. And I think I am happy with this. All right. So I'm going to get out of quick mask mode so I can hit the letter key or go to select and then deselect the edit in quick mask mode. So now what I want selected is the Droid Control Ship. So if you've watched any of my other tutorial videos, I do prefer the non-permanent removal. Let me go ahead and show you how I do that. So I am a big fan of masks, and what masks let you do is remove parts of your image you want to remove and make it transparent without actually erasing those parts. So if you come back later and you want to do a better job of smoothing out the edges where the green touches your object, you can do that. If you actually erase it, you save it, you close the program down, you'll have to redo all these steps all over again if you go back and realize that there's a piece that has some green on it that you didn't want to have on it. I'm going to add a new layer mask. So that's what this square with the circle when it does. It adds a new layer mask. So when I click on that, it uses my selection to see what I want cut out. It has a 16-bit alpha channel that defines the transparency. So everything that's white means 100% opaque, and everything that's black is 100% transparent. All right, I'm going to keep this organized. I'm going to create a folder for everything. So I'm going to call this Droid. So I'm just going to call it Droid Control Ship. Okay. Now I'm also a fan of doing everything on different layers so I can turn them on or off as much as possible. So with that, I'm going to add, not a new layer, but I want to add a new adjustment layer. All right, so if you're looking at this, some of the green spilled over onto this because this is kind of an off-white. You can kind of see the green light reflecting off of the fabric onto our object. And to eliminate that, I'm going to go back over to this layer, see where you see the layers. I'm going to click on a new adjustment layer, and I'm looking for selective color. Right? When I click that, if you go straight up, you see your properties. What I'm going to go and do is I want to remove the green from this. So we're on the selective color, and I'm choosing green. Right? So what I want to do is green is made up of cyan and yellow, so I'm going to remove my cyan and my yellow back 100%, and that, as you can see, I'm in the properties window. So let's go back down to the layers window and let's see the before and after. So the beauty about having this on its own adjustment layers, you can turn it on and turn it off, and you can see the changes. So I turned it off, and now you can see that green back on my object, my droid ship. So I turn it back on, the little green that bled over onto my object is removed. So there's that. And then another thing I like to do is add another adjustment layer called curves. And curves basically allow, it's a little more advanced than levels. It allows you to add contrast to your image. So if I go back to the properties window, you can see I got the curves adjustment layer selected. If I go up here, you can kind of see where the contrast is. I'm going to click somewhere in the middle and just bring it down slightly. See, if I bring it down too much, it makes it too dark. And if I have an image that's too dark, if I bring the curve up, it lightens the image. So I think my image was pretty decent color, but I want it to be just slightly darker. So I'm going to try and take this in the middle, and then we can see the before and after. So it makes it a little more darker, gives a little more contrast. What I want to do is I want to go ahead and set up another template type grid. So I'm going to create a new window, and let's just say 2600 by 2600. I'm going to create that, and I'm going to call this mini template. Okay. Now, one of the viewers of one of my last videos actually pointed out something which is really cool, and I'd like to give a shout out to Vincent D, who said that In some of my previous videos, I actually drew a square and used the grid lines like that, right, to make them 72 by 72. So one of the comments that Vincent D posted, and this is giving him a shout out, is that you can go to Edit inside of Photoshop. You can go to Edit and Preferences, and then under Guides, and pull up a new window. So it's over here where you can create your grid line. So I'm fine with what it has for the grid colors. I'm going to go and I want to create pixels. 72, I want to create a grid line at every 72 pixels. Let's say 20. There we go. I'm just guessing here. This is the first time I've done this. So let's see what it does. I go to View and Show Grid, and voila. Okay, so the subgrid is a small one. So okay, so this big black line is the actual 72 by 72 grid. So cool. Thank you, Vincent D. Okay, so let me rename this one. Let me save this as, I'm going to save this to cloud. I'm going to call this mini grid template. There we go. And now I'm going over to my mini templates. So I'm going to go ahead and close this folder. And if you click over here, you can actually merge the group. Now, as I say, I do not like to do things permanently because I might want to go back and change things later. I might want to add different filters and not want to have, I like to do things smarter, not harder. So if I hold down the Alt key and click on this little Properties Hamburger tab here, I have to hold down because I'm clicking the Alt key. So I have the Alt key held down. I click and hold down on that hamburger menu. Then if I go to Merge Group, while the Alt key is pressed and let go, it merges it, but as its separate layer. So I'm going to make sure that this layer is selected. I'm going to go ahead and drag this off so I can drag it onto my other screen. And I drag it on like that. Okay, so now I can put this back up here. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And here we go. We can see my grid. So this will be pretty large inside of Roll20. So you can come to Edit, Free Transform. And now we can make this a little bit smaller so it's not taking up so much space. But I'm going to go ahead and position this. It's just a little outside that grid. So I'm just going to use this slicing tool right here. If you don't see this, it might show up as your crop tool. So if you go over on your tool menu, you see the crop tool. If you click and hold down on it, you get multiple options. Okay, so I'm going to click and hold on the crop tool. I'm going to come down to the slice tool. Now there's a select slice tool and there's a slice tool. The slice tool is what you need to actually create your own slices. So I will show you how this comes in handy next. So I'm going to click on here, and what this does is it makes a slice. Okay, and then if I want to adjust that, I go to the select slice tool. This saves a lot of time just doing the grid, and it does appear to snap when I zoom in. So put that as close as possible to the ship. I'm going to go back to the move button and make sure my layer is selected. I'm going to nudge it using the arrow keys to make sure that nothing's getting cut off. Now I'm going to go back to the select slice tool. All right, and that allows me to select this and manipulate it. And I'm going to double click on it to give it a name. When I do that, this box pops up. I'm going to call it Droid Control Ship. Okay, and hit OK. So what I did is I made this big mini grid template so I can have multiple miniatures on here and size them the way I want and then export them. Okay, before I export it, I've got a white background here. It's hard to tell with the grid, so let me go ahead and turn this grid off real quick. Show grid. All right, and now I got a white background. I want to get rid of that so it's transparent, so I can make a transparent PNG. All right, so now you can see the checkered transparency. And now I'm going to go to File, Export, Save for Web. Now I know there's other ways of doing this, and feel free to write in the comments your favorite way of exporting images in Photoshop. This is my particular way I enjoy exporting the images. When I go export for web, it shows my slice here, and I can do multiple images at once if I have multiple slices, and that's why we double clicked earlier step to name it. So now I'm going to click on the particular slice, but the one that we created is the one we want to select. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to click on preset, and I'm going to select PNG 24 so you can see the background's transparent. Then I'm going to click save. I've got a lot of images. All right, so this is a ship, so I've already made a folder called ships. All right, and then one more very important step to do so you don't get a whole bunch of files that you don't want. So click on the drop down where it says all slices and make sure selected slices is chosen. All right, then when you save it, it's going to, if you don't have a folder called images already, it's going to create a folder called images and place your image that you're saving inside that folder. So I'm going to hit save. All right, so now if I navigate to that folder, ships, inside there is my image folder, and there's my image. All right, so that's pretty much how you do it. You can do the same thing with the second picture we got. All right, so I'm going to bring this over. So I'm going to drag this creature over. Okay. Create a new folder. Insectoid. All right, and I'm going to drag this inside that folder. Let's go ahead and do the selection again. Object selection tool. Try to see if this tool can remove that green first before I resort to a quick mask. I'm going to hold the Alt key and try to remove that green. That worked. Let's do it over here. And it got a little on it. So let me go to select and edit in quick mask mode. Be sure to grab your regular brush. All right, the white indicates what you want selected and the red indicates what you don't want selected. All right. Okay, and I think I can live with this. So I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to get out of the quick mask mode. And I'm going to go ahead and make a layer mask on that layer. All right, now the beauty of me creating everything as layers is I can go ahead and expand, even though I have this turned off, I can turn it back on, but it doesn't have to be turned on. I can expand this folder. I can click on the curves, and I can hold the shift button and click on the second layer as well, the selective color layer. So let me show what I'm doing. There's this new layer button right here, and if you drag layers and drop them on top of this new layer button, it will make duplicates. All right, so that's exactly what we want to do. So I'm going to duplicate those two layers, and now I'm going to drag them and drop them just above our new layer, and it applies them just the same, the exact same setting. So as you can see, the green is removed. And then it also gives it makes it a little bit darker. So sometimes, like the yellow of this creature has what looks like it might need a little more green, or it might look a little flat. So what you can do is you can actually adjust some of these properties. I find that tweaking the black a little makes it pop a little more, makes it stand out a little more to compensate for that green that was removed. So it kind of turns that green into like a grayish brown color. You can also mess with the magentas as well from the green channel. This is basically the green channel. So it's still removing the cyan and yellow from the greens, but it's adding a little more magenta and it's adding more black to it to kind of compensate so it doesn't look as flat. All right, so those are some things you can do. Again, this is another reason why I like having them on their own separate layers, so that I don't have to keep clicking the undo button, and I can adjust things here. Now I can do what I did last time. I can hold the Alt button, make sure this folder is selected, and I can say merge group. Right? Pull this off now. Right, and I can drag it onto my template. All right, now I can put this back, save it. I recommend saving often. All right, and now I can transform this guy. So let's go ahead and turn that grid back on. Go into View, Show, Grid. Right. I know this miniature, I believe the base is 3 squares by 3 squares, so I'm going to zoom in. I'm focusing on the base here, so I want the base to be 3 by 3. So I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. All right, it doesn't have to be perfect because it is at an angle. All right, but I like to line it up so that when I'm in roll 20, it looks like it's lined up on the grid like it would be if you were playing it with the actual miniature. So once I have that, I'm going to click on the Move tool or hit the Enter key. So now I'm going to go and choose the Slice tool. And I will start, so he has his claw hanging over just slightly. So I'm going to go ahead, instead of cutting that claw off, I'm okay with it overhanging a little bit. And then I want the whole square too, so he can be placed perfectly. Even if he overhangs a little bit, it makes it look more like it's on the map. Right? So there we go. I'm going to double click on it and call this insectoid. All right, I'm just going to say that's the alien spelling of what I want. All right, I'm going to go to File, Export, and export for a web. Again, if you have a better way of exporting, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. So in this mode, you can use your hand to move over. And I'm going to select PNG 24. There we go. And it's selected. I'm going to hit save. Again, make sure that it says selected slices. All right. And since this is our second one, if I didn't have any, the first one would have created a folder. So it's going to save them inside the image folder. So I'm going to hit the save button. Images. And there he is. Now, I probably put him in the wrong folder. That's okay because I can always move him. And I will because that's how I am. So I'm going to move him out of the ships folder. All right, I'm going to do the insectoid first. Drag and drop. All right, and he has 72 pixels instead of 70. So like I said, I am okay with making it a little bit smaller. So there we go. Now it looks like he lines up on the tile perfectly. And if there's a type, like if I want this guy to be on top, on the top layer, you can always select the token you want. And you can right click on that token and say to front. And now this guy, this insectoid, is behind the Octo Droid. Right? And I have a ships page. I'm going to put the Droid Control Ship on. I actually started adding Separatist on here, so let me drag and drop this one on. So there we go. There you go. That's pretty much it. So I think that concludes the tutorial. Thank you again for watching. Please like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments below if there's some other tutorial you would like to see me do in the future.